Hi, everybody. My name's C.L. Miller, and I'm with Interlude Press. If you're on Tumblr, you may know me better as Girly Sports Junkie. Welcome to IP's 24-hour launch party. Thank you so much for the support. We're really excited. We've gotten a lot of messages, and I'm here right now with my two partners in the company. We're going to spend the next 45 minutes maybe or so talking a little bit about Interlude and what the company is and what we hope to accomplish and who we hope to be. So let me introduce everybody. First, if you see a bar down towards the bottom, you will see a lovely photograph of a lady and her child. Unfortunately, she's got weak broadband where she's at right now along the Canadian border. But that is Annie Harper, our managing editor. Annie?
Hey, hi everyone.
You may know Annie better as Iconic Klein on Tumblr, very talented writer and also a publishing industry veteran. Interlude Press is her brainchild, and we're going to talk a little bit about how she got the idea for it. And then next to her, you'll see Lex Huffman. Lex?
Anybody?
Lex is the
also known as Justice Uniforms.
There we go. Kind of the strong, silent type sometimes. Lex is our director of technology. He understands all that stuff that just goes straight over my head. But he makes Interlude run smoothly. He's constantly working to make it a smooth and easy way to buy books, to get a look at what's coming, and just to have a nice, clean, easy-to-navigate site, and also helps make some pretty fantastic-looking books as well. So thank you very much for joining us, or if you're joining us after the fact, we'll be on YouTube afterwards. After we're done, it'll shift over and be posted up on our YouTube channel as well, which you can access from Google+. I guess the place to start, and I want to turn to Annie with this, is the story of how we came to be. I mean, today, as of right now, books are for sale officially, not pre-sale. Books are on sale, and it's our first official day of business. This is more than a year in the making. Annie, can you tell us a little bit about where you got the idea for Interlude and how we came to be?
Sure. Well, so some of it's on our FAQ on our website if you want to learn more about it, but it basically started over a year ago at BEA, which is Book Expo America, and I went to a panel. I go to BEA every year. And I went to a panel, and they happened to be talking about 50 Shades of Grey. It was all the talk. And what was interesting was one of the bigwigs that Simon & Schuster said, I think what we have to learn from fan fiction is how they can predict what readers want that we aren't providing as publishers. And that was the initial seed that planted in my brain. And then over the course of the summer, I started to connect the dots, and started talking to Girly and Lex and a few other people, actually. Just basically starting the sentence with, wouldn't it be cool if, and wouldn't it be cool if the brilliant, talented writers that I knew in my favorite hobby of being in fandom had a chance to be published and maintain their fandom identities and leverage their readership base, and then build a bridge to traditional readership audiences or general audiences. And that conversation happened over the course of several months until we got really serious and said, hey, maybe we should just go ahead and do this. Fortunately, we were lucky enough to already be good friends, and I think everybody really willing to give this a shot, and so we dove in pretty hardcore at the end of the summer and in the fall, and built our vision for the company over a course of a few months before we even reached out to any authors. That's sort of the beginning of it.
Annie, you bring up something that I want to ask a question about, because it's a question I've seen online from time to time. As we were starting to introduce the company, people didn't really know who we were. They said, well, this has been done before. There are other companies. There are opportunities for people who write fan fiction to get published. What about this is different?
Well, yeah, there's absolutely opportunities, and there's one publishing house actually that does publish fan fiction writers in a different way. it's what we're trying to do is bring together and create a boutique publishing house that really operates like a family of authors, cross-promoting and supporting each other. And what I personally wanted to do for my piece of it as bringing my publishing experience was to try and provide an experience for authors where they had information and as much training as possible ongoing. I mean, it's a process. Once your book is released, then there's more marketing that has to be done after that. But in my experience working with authors, they rarely get an opportunity to work with their publisher to help build their careers. And I feel that that's something distinctive. And we're just getting off the ground. So we have, a lot of systems to put in place, but it's, that's what's in our hearts, that's our vision, that's our mission, that's our plan.
Okay.
I will say though, can I say one other quick thing?
Yeah.
When you and I were at BEA this year, we went to that panel, and there was a panel on fan fiction this year, which we didn't. It wasn't fantastic, but there were some fantastic people on it.
Yes.
And so definitely it's changing. I think that the tide is turning. We're sort of at the beginning where instead of just looking how can we learn from fandom, it's how can we find these authors and work with them. So I think it's interesting to note that in just 1 year that there was a big shift.
I think it's rapidly changing, and particularly from a marketing point of view. There are certainly some authors of fan fiction who are out there and publishing books, and not self-publishing, but with publishers, and able to talk about it. But for a long time, there was a stigma attached to it, inappropriately so. And in some cases, authors either felt that they needed to somehow hide their fan fiction, that they couldn't really embrace that background. And that's not always the case, but it's certainly been prevalent for a long time. And I think that's one thing, particularly in marketing, what we do, that we want to embrace fan fiction. We want to celebrate fan fiction and the authors of fan fiction. There are some enormously talented people. If there's one thing I've learned through the research process of this, is that a lot of the work I've seen in the fan community exceeds what's out there as published novels right now. There are some remarkable authors, and we're fortunate enough to be working with several of them who are putting in not just weeks of time, but months of laborious time, really focused on creating something wholly new from where it started, and also people who are starting entirely original work as well.
Yeah, and I think another difference is, there may be authors who opt to do this. So I'm not saying we're the only people that suggest this. However, we do absolutely support authors and their fandom connections and family and so forth, and we are a part of fan culture, the three of us. So we encourage our authors to make whatever choice they want to make in terms of keeping their fan fiction up or not. So if they are writing a novel that's based on a fan fiction that then becomes original work, it's their choice if they want to keep that fan fiction up for as long as they want to, or take it down. It's not up to us.
And
we just support them.
So far, every author we're working with has opted to keep their fan fiction, the original version, up in every form.
Yep.
But it's their choice, their call. I think that's a wonderful thing about this group. Annie, before we go, and I want to talk a little bit also about the store and being Tumblr-based and sort of embracing that as our platform. But you did talk about your background in publishing, and I was thinking maybe it'd be a good time for the three of us each to just kind of briefly say what our background is going into this company. Annie, you've got quite a background. I mean, I know that people know that you're a ghostwriter, but you do a lot more than that in publishing.
I do. It's odd. I'm just uniquely suited for this crazy Interlude Press thing that we decided to do. So yes, I am a ghostwriter of nonfiction books, primarily in personal and professional development. So I have worked with, I think it's over 650 authors now, in some capacity. While my heart wasn't entirely in that process, what I did learn was I learned publishing. So, and I didn't just learn it from a traditional standpoint. I learned it from self-publishing aspect, hybrid publishing, newbie authors, really successful best-selling authors, and everybody in between. And while it may have felt a little bit, you know, like everything in the kitchen sink at the time, what it did was give me a preparation for really understanding how to build a career as an author from the ground up. And so over time, I started not only ghostwriting for clients, but helping them, mostly out of necessity because they weren't getting any support from their publishers, to help them build what's called an author platform, which is basically all the ways that you touch the world. So what's your social media, your personal appearances, your actual content in terms of your book, etc. And helping people build that platform so they could establish and engage with, very important, their readership. So I bring those skills to the table and that knowledge. And I'm really, really excited to be able to share some of that, especially going forward now that we have titles that are launched and out, to be able to share that with our incredible family of authors.
And Lex, you've got an extensive background, of quite a history in technology. Do you mind telling us a little bit about your background there?
Well, I've been in computers in one aspect or another since the 1980s. I am that old, and including actually writing some of the code that implements Linux, which is the basis of the Android operating system and most of the web servers out there in the world. I've recently been kind of experimenting in alternative ways of serving up media, and including streaming video. And now I'm busy, very busy, with Interlude Press, and trying to bring the best of LGBTQ books to all of our readers out here.
Yeah, this is why when I can't get my iPhone to turn on, I just message Lex and say, do I bang it against the wall, or what do I think he knows what to do? And just very quickly, my background, I've spent my career in media and communications, starting out as a newspaper reporter and editor, and then, like many newspaper reporters and editors do, we want to put food on the table, so we move into a career in PR, where I've been for many years. And as of last October, I actually left a position where I was president of a firm to devote myself full-time to developing Interlude and the marketing and communications strategy and processes for this company. And I'm having the time of my life. It's a lot of work. It's been a lot of hard work. I'm going to be punchy as can be after 24 hours because I'm on board for the entire thing. So, if you want to see me really screw up my language skills by the end of this, I should pretty much be there. But we're having a blast. We're having a great time. Let's talk a little bit, because Lex, you mentioned something very important, that we're developing LGBTQ romantic fiction and what that means to us. Because, in fact, I saw some messages on Tumblr the other day where, and I certainly don't want to single anyone out because it was someone who I have great respect for. But there are some myths and misnomers out there that we're only doing M&M fiction, for example, or that diversity perhaps isn't a priority. Excuse me. And the fact of the matter is, it's a very high priority for our company. And one thing that I think all three of us take great pride in is the fact that today, the day we launch, we have titles in process, titles being published that represent gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, romantic stories involving divorce. See, it's already happening. I am not even 24 hours in. Diverse cultural, racial, and identity. Hear what you have to say about it. And we've certainly gotten suggestions. It's almost like a virtual suggestion box, and a lot of those have actually already been implemented. So, if you have an idea, you have concerns, come to us and let us know about, because we want to hear those things. But we assure you that's something that we are very, very deeply committed to here. And when we stop and look at some of the other companies that are publishing LGBTQ fiction, it took them many years to get to the point of offering just their very first lesbian title. We already have one in process that we'll publish in 2015, as well as a couple other titles as well. So it's something that we're very, very proud of.
Yes.
Annie, would you like to add anything to that?
Well, by the way, I'm seeing a question that I think is important to answer right now, which is, what is M&M fiction?
That
is it okay that?
Please do.
So that just stands for male and male. So, it's what dominates, frankly, in the LGBTQ romance genre. And, speaking as the L part of the GLBT, I'm definitely down with creating more diversity there. And so we have a couple titles in the works, and then I know actually of some writers who are working on, not under contract yet, but playing around with some stuff. But ultimately, I think that our goal is to be all the letters of the rainbow as best we can. I mean, I really think it's important to note that diversity is essential. It's really important, and we're all committed to it. But ultimately, we want great stories, and so we definitely want to make sure that the focus is on story, and diversity is definitely a concern, and something we want to make sure we stay focused on as we grow.
Absolutely. Someone else asked, what is fan fiction? Who wants to tackle that? You want me to jump in, or Annie, would you like to talk about fan fiction?
Well, I kind of wish that some of our veteran fan fiction writers were on with us right now. There's going to be an interesting panel later about that, so I think that's going to be a cool one to check in on. But it's writing stories that are based on other work that you're a fan of. So whether that's in the form of a fan, if you're a fan of a television show, a movie, a book, or a video game, it's writing stories based on those characters and that world.
Right. Just for a random example, a movie that is a work of fan fiction of a book is Clueless is fan fiction of Jane Austen's Emma. So
sure.
That's one example of it. I mean, their examples actually go back hundreds of years if you really want to be technical, but the term fan fiction's really been developed in the last 40 years or so, when people started writing Star Trek fan fiction and passing it along by hand. Had a fascinating discussion of this, someone who was very involved in that culture at the time, just recently, and it's amazing how it's evolved to a social media thing now that actually authors of fan fiction now have ended up being published, they've ended up being screenwriters, so it has developed very rapidly, and we're going to have a panel, I believe our fourth panel of the day, at 6 a.m. Eastern Time, 3 a.m. Western Time, will be about fan culture and about fan fiction and how it's changed over the years. We've got 3 people who've been in that world for a long, long time. It's going to be a fascinating discussion, so thank you for that question, too. And we'll check that one off.
I think it's important to note that the the authors we're working with, the titles that we've signed that may have been based on fan fiction, are all sort of alternative universes of that fan fiction. So it's not we're not changing names to make it original. It's really wholly original work based on fan fiction that's already so far removed from the world that it's called an alternate universe. So, it's almost like 2 generations out and then original, Well, that's a really good point. Maybe you can talk a little bit about where a story starts, what it goes through to become a book. I think there was a sense earlier, well, they just changed the names and changed the locations and boom, you have a book, which isn't the case at all, actually. You go through quite a lot. And if you have a title that would be described as being in canon, that's not something that's generally considered particularly easy to turn into an original novel. There might be exceptions to that, but we are looking at AUs
what does one of the writers go through after they've written, let's say, a work of fan fiction? They're considering that they'd like it to be an original novel. What will they do to go from point A to point Z?
Well, again, there's another panel about that as well later, but just in briefly, it's actually a really extensive process. Even some of our authors who thought it might be a piece of cake found it to not be the case. I think that it's really reimagining the characters. All of our novels are character-driven, so I think it's really important to point out. We're not looking at high-concept stuff. We're looking at truly character-driven, beautiful stories. And because of that, it starts with that. The authors need to look at their characters and reimagine them as their own. And many of them already had been doing that. Their characters were so far removed from the original source work that it wasn't really a stretch. But even just renaming a character is reimagining them. What does it, a name is huge. But it's more than that. It's creating the whole universe within that they live, and thinking about, when you change one aspect of the story, and then that is a domino effect. So it's a process of reimagining the story through reimagining the characters, and then going through and making sure also that you've fleshed out all of your characters in a way that fan fiction writers don't necessarily have to do, because they can rely on the readership's knowledge of the source material.
What can you talk a little bit about the editing process, because that also is, there's kind of like three phases, I'd say, for the author. There's the writing process, obviously. There's the editing process, which is multi-layered, and then there's the marketing process. Can you talk a little bit about the editing?
Sure. Well, so we follow the same model that any publisher follows, although I will say we don't have 20 people on our team, but we do have an editing team that comes from publishing. So every single person on our team are veterans of publishing. So and have been behind many, many, many books in many, many genres. And they're having a really, really good time with our books, I have to say that.
First, an author will go through a developmental edit in this process, which is looking at the content of the book, right?
Yes. So the author goes through a story edit or a developmental edit. It's interchangeable, and so they want to get the story right, the characters right, to make sure that the tone works, the pacing works, all that good stuff, and all the central questions are answered. That nothing is unnecessary, that everything is fleshed out. Once the author is satisfied with it and we are satisfied with it, it moves into what I would call book production, and that is several rounds of editing, copy editing, proofreading, a couple 3 passes with proofreading. We've got many eyes on each book, and then it moves into for the final book production, which is kind of where we are now, where you can go actually anywhere you want and pick up a copy of Bleeding Heart, our first title.
We've got a question here that says, are there particular ways that you're hoping to see IP grow and develop over the coming years? This is from Rachel. Well,
I think back to the diversity. I think expanding we have a really diverse roster of authors. That's something that's really important to note. But I'd like to expand. I know we all agree that we would like to find authors in other fandoms. We would also like to create more titles that represent different letters in the GLBTQ rainbow. And I would also love to see us create more opportunities to engage readership the way that fan culture engages their readers. That's something we've talked about from day one, and right now we're in the launch and startup phase, so we haven't had a chance to really get into the more sophisticated approach there, but we definitely want to build our readership in a similar way. So I think that's important to note.
I think it's also really exciting, particularly now that we've got our first submissions window open, to get to know some new writers and become exposed to writers that maybe we've never seen before from other fan communities, rather than the one that we have originated in, which is wonderful and has some incredibly talented people. But it's really exciting when you see a new voice, hear a new voice, I should say, that's incredibly talented, and we're really looking forward to reading those and getting to know some more writers in the process, and hopefully getting them on board, whether it be in short story form or writing novels. This is not something you jump into before you even print your first book, but we're pretty excited about that. We've got that process rolling before we had our first book started. So I think that's another thing. That's something I'm very excited about. Let's switch gears just a little bit. I want to talk to Lex about the store for Interlude and the fact that it's based on Tumblr and the innovation that's being worked into the products that we're offering.
Well, actually, we've been talking this evening about the importance of the culture of fan fiction, and we met each other through Tumblr and LiveJournal and all of these ways of hooking up and discovering each other and getting feedback on stories and all of that. And you just don't really get that on, for example, a WordPress kind of blog. And even very popular WordPress blogs, it's not uncommon to look at, for example, the comments on it and see maybe just a couple comments, as opposed to on Tumblr, it's not uncommon to see posts get feedback in the hundreds or thousands. And, I thought, we've all thought that we want to keep that kind of heavy interaction that you get in Tumblr culture. And there's other social media that are like that also, Twitter, for example. And we decided that it's worth overcoming a lot of the obstacles. It isn't an easy platform to work with, to actually build a commercial website around Tumblr.
We love it and need it, right?
Yeah. And I think it's turned out to be more than worth it. I don't think there's any other platform out there we could have gotten our message out as quickly as we have. I mean, the first the outside world ever heard of us was really in April.
Yeah.
And here we are, we're selling books now.
Let's talk a little bit about eBooks and your approach to them and from a technology standpoint, because I think we're doing some kind of cool things with it. Can you tell us about that?
Well, again, this kind of feeds into this whole culture of sharing. We decided that we wanted to do a package of ebooks that you buy directly from us. Unfortunately, we don't have the control over what kind of ebooks get sold at Amazon or Barnes & Noble. For example, Amazon will only sell the Kindle-style ebook. If you buy an ebook directly from us, we actually will give you a bundle of 3 different kinds of ebook files. A PDF, which is the best looking format. It looks pretty much just like the printed book. That's the best for viewing on, for example, an iPad or your own laptop or desktop machine. But we also do provide the EPUB and the Kindle files in that same bundle. And that way, if you do have a Kindle reader or a Nook reader or any other kind of reader that uses those, we've got you covered too. There are advantages of those. It's what they call a reflowable format, which means you can make the letters just as big as you need them if you have any kind of vision challenges.
Not that any of us have aging eyes.
Right. And it's also a way of future-proofing yourself. You might have a Kindle now, but you might switch to an iPad next year. And guess what? You won't have to buy another book from us.
How about digital rights management?
That's easy. We don't have any. And our files are unlocked, and you can move it from one of your devices to another one of your devices with no other challenges. We put our readers on the honor system.
I like that. And I know that we were all very committed to that. We, when we were developing the company, in one of our conference calls early on, the question of DRM came up, and I think it was a universal no. And discussion ended. We didn't want it, and we didn't put it in. We're getting a lot of questions, so I'm going to fire away on a few of these. From Becky. She says, obviously, getting a publishing house off the ground is a large endeavor to begin with. But are you hoping to see that these books will take on lives through other media, such as television or film?
Sure, of course. I mean, we want our authors to kill it. You know, we love our stories so much, and we're so passionate about these stories. Oh my gosh. When we get a manuscript in that's, due for delivery, we get so excited. And to see the authors, the best part of this is to see the author's books in print and have them get through this process. So if it takes on another life and gives more people a chance to hear these great stories, absolutely, we hope it does.
From Misty, we have the question, looking back over the time you've spent getting IP to this point, is there anything you'd do differently knowing what you know now? I don't think anyone who's serious about business will look back at what they did and said, of course you can adjust things. And you have to learn from everything you've done, whether it was a mistake or simply you figured out something better, but you always have to be open to new ideas. And I know that we've made adjustments and adjusted course along the way, even in the short period since we announced the company. We've had suggestions come in about, hey, have you thought about adjusting the way you sell it this way? And we'll take a look at it and go, yeah, that makes sense, and we implement it right away. And there have been a lot of things along those lines. Annie, Lex, either of you?
Yeah, I'm thinking. I mean, there's definitely. I would like to say that we have an aggressive publication schedule, and
I know where you're going with this.
And but it's for a reason. There's too much to go into, but in a nutshell, we're always going to be a boutique house. Even if we did 10 times as many titles, we would still be a boutique house compared to the big 5 or even some mid-tier publishers. So that said, we're not going to be doing our authors justice or the company as a whole justice if we just have a couple of titles every few months. And so our aggressive schedule is for a reason, and I definitely think it's been challenging to keep up with it. That said, I think we'll be very glad that we did. So I can't really say. Actually, even with the things that we've had to adjust, I mean, it's just a learning process, so it's nothing that I have regret for. No.
I mean, when it comes to the overall direction of the company and our business plan, we spent so much time and effort developing it that I've felt very solid about it from day one. And it's something we'll continue to improve on, but the foundation of it is really solid and something all three of us are incredibly enthusiastic about.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, what are some more here? As a group, this is from Your Tragic Fairy. And by the way, I've got to say, Your Tragic Fairy, we are giving you the ebook of your choice because you have sent us a slew of questions for several panels. You have gone above and beyond. So take a look at our roster as it's announced and pick an ebook for yourself. You get one. She asks, as a new group, what has been the most exciting or terrifying part of this venture for you? I know no fear. I come from a world of crushing deadlines, politicians, corporate honchos. I'm personally accustomed to and sort of thrive in and enjoy. Not that we're looking to battle anyone. And it's been a really pleasant run for us so far. We've had a couple of people with questions along the way, and they're always that. But I'm having a blast. But that launch day of 2 launch dates. The first one when we announced the brand and started to slide that out, it took on a life of its own so rapidly that we actually pulled back. And I actually think that's really to our credit. It shows how responsive we are, because we had a game plan that would have had us going with that for much longer, and we reeled it in very quickly and said, it's done its job, it's time to stop. The other one would have been the day that we first started pre-sale on our first titles, because both Annie and I were at a convention. We were at the Romantic Times Book Lovers Convention. If someone had told me 5 years ago I was going to something called the Romantic Times Book Lovers Convention, I would have laughed really hard. But the fact of the matter, it's a very important conference for us now. We were there in New Orleans and meeting a lot of people and attending a lot of panels and learning a great deal of stuff. And at the same time, this was going on. And so any hiccup in the process, we had to make sure we had decent Wi-Fi. And there was just a long and hilarious and painful story of what went on in New Orleans just to even find a room that caused such great challenges and heartburn for 24 hours. That was a scary moment, but thankfully we have Lex, who just has everything dialed in and got it under control very quickly for us. But that was a scary evening for a while. It was the night of the season finale of Glee. That I remember, because we were in a hotel for exactly 1 hour before we bailed on them and moved to a new location, just long enough to watch the show. Annie, how about you?
Can you just repeat the question? I got caught up in your answer. I'm
sorry. I'm so focused. As a new group, what's the most exciting or terrifying part of this venture for you?
Oh, gosh. Signing the first authors was huge. It was amazing. And I was just recently at one of our printers. We have two different distribution models, which I won't get into, but we have a small printer in Wisconsin that handles sort of advanced reader copies and so forth, and I had the opportunity to go to on site and see the books coming off the presses, and that was pretty special. And I've seen that before with other books, but this means so much more. This means so much more. Pretty thrilling for me. But I will say that the three of us make a really great team, and so it's always fantastic to connect with Girly and Lex. Even when things are high pressure and high stress, we balance each other out pretty well, so that's very enjoyable.
We won't say who the stressful one is. We have a question from Side of the Shore wondering, did the process of publishing differ from what you were expecting?
Well, not for me, but I'm
You're used to it.
Yeah.
I think that was, you've got such a background in this that everything that's happened so far, I'm so grateful that you know the things you know, and it was a real leg up in this process, because we knew who the players were, we knew what the different distribution routes were, which companies were in play, and we knew what questions to ask, and gratefully I didn't have to be the one asking them. You did, because you knew the language far better than I did at the time. Occasionally you get a surprise, but we've not had anything earth-shattering on that front.
Knock on wood.
Okay, let's see. Do you have any advice for people who want to go into editing and publishing? Asks Julia.
Allow more time. It's always, everything's going to take more time than you think.
Yeah. If I would say that if the it's, I don't know, does it say her name? Did it say her name?
Julia.
Okay, I'm sorry. You did say that. Sorry. I would, if editing is the goal, to be an editor at a publishing house, I would definitely say go to college. go to college, get a master's degree, go to a good college that has a good mentorship program connected with publishing houses, because as important as it is to get the degree, it's twice as important to get the networking contacts. So that would be my advice. And to get to one of the, New York is obviously the obvious choice for publishing, but you may be somewhere else in the world, and to just get to a city where you have more options and can network with more people. That would be my very, very small little tiny bit of advice.
We've got a question that it's partly answered already, but we'll focus on the second part, which is they ask, why did you decide to start a company? Wouldn't it be possible to piggyback on an already established publishing house?
Sure, yeah. I mean, we could, but you'd have to convince that house that there's a market for it. And they're just other publishers are just waking up to this, and maybe aren't going to handle it in the same way that we really want to handle it. I mean, we feel very protective of our authors. We want to see them succeed. We don't want to be an author mill. We don't want to just have, we're not trying to just push through title after title after title. We're trying to help nurture careers, even if it means that our authors move on to bigger houses. That would make us happy if they had a career that warranted that. So, yes, that could have happened, but first you'd have to convince the house, and then you'd have to, try to wrestle them to the ground to make sure that your authors were treated the way that you really hoped they would be. So.
I think that's a great answer, because I think that's kind of the foundation of our company, is that we'd really like to try and shepherd some careers along. We think there are a lot of authors in the fan community who've got that potential and who have such incredible skills. And we were talking earlier today, and I went on my usual, meandering way and said, I don't like calling what we do, what we make, romance novels, even though we're in the romance genre. We're definitely in the romance genre. And then there's several subgenres. We've got science fiction, fantasy, contemporary, historical, erotica. We'll have young adult next year. So we've got a lot of subgenres, but we are the romantic literature genre. But still, I can't get it out of my head that I don't like calling what we're publishing romance novels, because I grew up with the romance novels with the bodice rippers that were, kind of junky dime novels, and these most definitely are not that. These are, the manuscripts I've read so far are just, they're outstanding books. They're moving, and granted, the first titles that we have come from a base that originated in fan fiction. If you're familiar with those titles, you know just how very good they are. And we're starting to see our very first, from the ground up, wholly original fiction from some of the authors, and it's stunning. There's some great books in the pipeline. How about we talk just real quickly, because we're almost at the end of our time here. Oh, let's answer this question too. What has been your favorite part of the process so far?
Lex?
Talking to the authors. I got into this whole thing really because CL and Annie are my two best friends in the world, and I just love this, and I wanted to support them in it. But we had our first author meeting, and she was in tears from happiness getting to talk to us. And as I've told everybody, I am sustained by the tears of others now. And it's just such a special moment, bringing, these are other people's dreams, and, we really are getting to actually help some of these people, make their dreams come true. And, I just didn't think that I would be finding that every day in this kind of a field. It's just awesome.
Mm. I agree. We had a lot of initial meetings with authors, dating back to November or so of last year. and so many of them ended in, and not tears like we were bullying them or anything, but happy tears, and it was really incredible and moving. And I can be kind of a hard-hearted soul sometimes, and each time I was like, oh my God, I feel weepy. This is so, it really felt incredible, and particularly, having come off something where I stepped away from a big job and decided to go all in on developing a little company, helping develop a little company. It was such a reinforcement to that decision to be able to have those meetings and feel so good afterwards. And I think no matter how difficult it is to keep the schedule that we've kept for the last several months, what's most rewarding about it at the end of the day is seeing that book show up.
I agree with all of the above, and for me, to be finally working in to be in publishing for so long and to be working on projects that I genuinely care about every single day is just heaven. So
I'm going to do one more question, then we're going to wrap it up and talk a little bit about the 24 hours. And this also is from your Tragic Fairy, who asks, what kinds of authors, either content, content in terms of what they write, or personality-wise, do you look for when you're taking on future projects? I'm going to jump into part of this, and Annie, feel free to cut in any time, but I think what she's asking is, what are you looking for in a book? And we're looking for a lot of things. It's not simply, does it have a lot of readers? That might be part of it. If a writer has an established fan base, that's certainly going to help them launch their title, but it's not the only thing, not at all. We're looking for well-written books. We are looking for good storytelling, well-developed characters. We're looking for people who are that we think are going to be able to take editing, too, and that's very important. It can be a difficult thing to do. I've been around editing and been editing all my professional life, so I'm kind of used to it, but it can be a shock to your system when you see the virtual red ink on the paper. We consider the market. Is this a title that has the potential to leak to a general audience, which is our goal for these titles? We obviously want to market to the fan community and cater to the fan community, but we also hope someday to have bestsellers as well, and we're going to try very hard to do that. And have they got the capacity for it? Can we develop the market for it? Is it a workable title? And by that I mean we talked about AU versus canon earlier, and the more AU, the more alternate universe, the better. In other words, if you've written something in fan fiction that you want to convert to a novel, the more original base you have to work from, the farther along you are in the process. But if it's very dependent on what already exists in that fan community from the original source, then it's going to be a lot more difficult. So it's a combination of all those things. And frankly, does the author have the time too? And that's a very big issue for a lot of the writers we've talked to.
I would just add also that I think we're looking for authors that are committed to developing a catalog of work, a body of work, not just one novel. But it doesn't mean that we have authors who are have great professional lives outside of what they're doing for Interlude, but are still working on their next novel. So we really want to see authors that are committed to building a career, even if it's a side career.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to just very quickly, since it's near the end of the hour, just talk about the next 24, actually technically 23 hours. We'll be done by 11 o'clock Eastern time. But over the next 24-ish hours, we will be on every other hour in the same place, same bat time, same bat channel, talking with our authors, so you get a chance to meet them and ask them questions about the books that they're writing. We're going to talk about the art for Interlude. I just have a quick cheat sheet for that here because these are our 3 launch titles. Let's do first ones first. There we go. We have, these are just the cards, not the books, but we have Bleeding Heart, which of course was released today. Next week's title, Platonic, with that cool split-up bed, and by mystery author A.J. DeWall, the lovely Forever Man. So we will have a lot of discussion of the artwork behind Interlude. We will be, like I said, chatting with authors. We'll be talking about the fan community, the evolution of fan fiction, where it's been and where it's going, and our place in it, whatever little corner we may have cut out for ourselves. And like I said, it's a chance to get to know the author, so please tune in. If you go to our website at interlude.com, you'll see the full schedule there, and check us out. And be sure to enter the raffle. You'll also find the link on our site, because we have a grand prize at 10 p.m. Eastern Time for a year's worth of Interlude eBooks. Those are those DRM-free multi-format eBooks that Lex was talking about earlier. That's a prize worth over $200, so that's a whole lot of books for you, so be sure to enter that. Also, in every panel, we'll be giving out the author's ebooks during those panels, also from the raffle site, so be sure to check that out. We'll see you at, hopefully see you at 2 a.m., where we will be live. These people are crazy. They said, yes, we'll go live at 2 a.m. I'm putting on some coffee, and at that time, we will be talking to the authors of our first 3 titles. That is going to be a lively panel. That's A.J. DeWall, also known as Iconic Quain, as luck may have it, Kate Paddington, who you may know as Duna Rose, and Melissa Graves, who I think you may all know as Miss Basie. And that is going to be a heck of a panel. 2 a.m. We'll see you then. Thanks for joining us, and hopefully you'll party with us for the next 24 hours. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.